Welcome back to the Behavioral Gabaret. I'm Carrie Woodward. I'm a board certified behavior analyst and an early intervention specialist.
And I'm Javen Encarnacion. I'm a behavior analyst and consultant.
Okay, I'm so excited to be diving into chapter 19, which is all about social behavior. This is where Skinner says, forget the special forces or group instincts. It's still behavior, just happening between people.
Yeah, he's basically arguing that social interactions, everything from smiling at your neighbor to leading a country, can be explained by the same principle that explains a pigeon pecking a key, which is kind of crazy to think about. The difference isn't in the kind of behavior, it's in what controls that behavior.
We'll unpack how social reinforcers like approval and attention shape what we do, why leaders and followers exist in every group, and how cultural systems, even the unstable ones, emerge out of these tiny behavioral exchanges.
So, whether you're curious about why teasing works, how we catch someone's eye, or why mobs form, this episode's got you covered. Let's get social, Skinner style.
Okay, so Skinner argues that most social behavior, from flirting to leadership, is built on socially mediated reinforcement. This just means reinforcers that are being provided by other people. So this is stuff like attention, approval, affection. How does our understanding of social reinforcement change the way that we think about motivation, influence, or even manipulation in our day-to-day life? How do you see it unfold, Javen?
I Part of me wonders if it changes it or if it changed more significantly before society kind of responded to these things because it in a lot of ways some of the rationales that he was explaining were like, yeah, that's isn't that what we believe? Other ones were very novel or it seemed to be more radical, but a lot of it seemed to make sense in a way that wasn't earth shattering. And so,
Yeah.
in context of when this was written, though, and when thinking about like introspective psychology, I think that's it was probably an even
Yeah.
bigger deal there. But it definitely it like the idea of socially mediated reinforcement. So still, rather than behavior occurring from within and I'm doing this to get attention. Well, yes, and I think that's one thing that gets people tripped up is we can explain how things are for attention or approval or affection without the person doing without saying that the person is engaging in these behaviors specifically to access these things in a way that they know that they're doing it to access that
Oh, yeah.
for like so I used to think that I whenever I was his age and I engaged in what would be considered attention seeking behavior, I wasn't thinking, oh, I want attention.
For
And I
sure.
think that's what trips people up a lot is
Yeah.
we, especially when we talk about our behavior, I don't do that for X, Y, or Z. It's because of, these, all these crazy things,
I think that like a
solutions.
behavior that is seeking attention or is maintained by attention is probably one of the least recognized forms of self behavior or reinforcement. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody acknowledges the behaviors that they do to access attention. Like, if, and we know that it's one of the main functions of behavior. So we know that it's got a large majority of the behaviors that everybody's engaging in is to access some level of attention from others. And yet I feel like almost everybody did say like, nope, I
Wow.
don't have behavior I'm not trying to get attention for that. I
That
think
is,
all the time.
I never thought about it that way. That is
Yeah.
very real. Yeah, it's almost embarrassing. Like, oh, yes, I want their attention. So I'm going to do these
Right.
things.
Right. But like
I'm going to
I have
post on
yes.
socials.
No, I
Keep
just
going.
I have had people in my life that have like there's been some like bizarre behavior and I have to sit back and think like there has to be attention seeking happening in those behaviors because it doesn't make
Mhm.
sense to me in any other way. And yet if you ask that person, like there is no way that they would ever acknowledge that that was the motivation behind their behavior. I really feel like for tangible reinforcement, it's obvious. We will acknowledge it. Like, yes, I wanted a cheeseburger. I was hungry. I hadn't had food in a long time. I saw the sign for McDonald's and I went over and I wanted to get the cheeseburger. But I don't know that anybody can truly acknowledge that the behavior that they engaged in was to just access somebody else's attention.
Or even if they know it, to admit
Right,
it,
right.
because then it's I think there is a level of shame there too. That's
Feels a
really
little yucky,
powerful.
huh?
I think, and so now that you say that, I think that could be one of the biggest reasons that behavior analysis hasn't been embraced by the larger society, because it brings, it does shine a light and bring our behavior into the light. And I think we prefer that our behavior operates in the shadows of introspection and in interpretation rather than really seeing it for what it is, because it does bring some humbling feelings to it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I have this example. So when my husband and I were like enough in our dating relationship where like you could be honest with each other, he hates getting an electric shock, right? So like when it's a windy day and you
Oh,
walk
me
on
too.
carpet, okay? Like to the point though that his reaction was like so loud, he would like yell. And I said to him once, I was like, you know that you can control that. He's like, no, I literally can't control it. It's like I have no control over that. And I was like, I think you should notice how you react when I'm not around. And so there it was like a couple weeks later and I got home from work and he's like, you're never gonna believe this. I got shocked today and there was nobody around and I didn't say anything. He's like, you were right. And I was like, yeah, so there's a lot like I just don't think people sometimes behavior is so automatic. It's so like the automaticity of reinforcement is so built in that they don't understand or see it. They don't have to understand it for it to be the case. But it was for him, it was like, oh my God, you're right. I am doing it for attention. Like I had no idea.
That brings that reminds me of last episode where we talked about self-awareness,
Yeah.
and it does bring a degree of control and realization too.
Hmm.
um that's so interesting.
Yeah.
That's mind-blowing. That's,
Like,
I love that you said it like that.
it does take a level of willingness to acknowledge when your partner is right, though, also.
Yes.
In cooperative systems, one person's behavior, the leader, is under external control, while others, like the followers, are controlled by that leader's behavior. And yet both of them are mutually dependent on each other. And I feel like the timing for this discussion is really prescient, especially for those of us that are living in the United States, wouldn't you say? Let's discuss what the external control is that might be responsible for somebody like, let's say, President Trump's behavior. This is one of those discussions where it becomes really difficult to continue wearing the behavior analyst hat because it's so easy, at least for me, to like dislike a person. And yet here we are going to dive into explaining the environmental control for that person's actions. What do you
I
think?
think the idea, I come back to my presentation in our class about the idea of self-control
Mm,
and really pausing, and if I have to take, not even use his name and use someone else's name and just describe the behavior objectively, um, really helps for someone that I struggle with having compassion and empathy for.
mm,
Um, but in cooperative systems like this, I think about how even President Trump's behavior, because we actually know a good bit about his instructional history. So
okay, yep,
knowing, like, we can make inferences so objectively too, and
right.
predictions. Knowing his history, his learning history, coming from an affluent background, the character traits that he's presented, and we can make an estimated guess that this person has probably not heard the word no,
Mm,
where it's stuck in a lot of ways. So in many ways, I do see it, a lot of his behavior very similar to that of what a toddler would do. So these
yeah,
tantrums, these fits of
yeah,
rage, the impact is greater, um,
yes,
and but the ability to manipulate and to respond to it almost, to me, it seems less complex than someone who has what we would consider a better character,
yeah,
like, like President Obama, or
right, right.
even Bush, maybe. You know the I think that would be harder to understand. What about you? What do you think?
Well, I was just, as you were talking, I was thinking about like there's so much that comes up in like traditional psychology that I always just try to want to like break down from a behavior analytic perspective. And in some ways, I feel like he's sort of a bully, you know?
Hmm.
And I think in traditional psychology, there's a lot of talk about people who bully were bullied by somebody else at some point, and so that manifests in exerting power and dominance over people that they can. I don't know how to explain that from a behavior analytic perspective if it goes back to Skinner's argument that dominance is an important drive and if that's where it comes from. Or if I think about when, hearing about his life story, that he had this sort of detached father that was
Hmm.
very, very strict and like had high expectations and not a lot of like nurturing and love in a traditional sense, like emotional security and but that it was probably supplanted with like costly items, things. Presents and gifts sort of were given as a token of love and affection as opposed to actual true love and affection. And again, thinking about it through a behavior analytic lens, is there like affection? Is that a primary reinforcer? Does that require some level of conditioning? And if it is absent for a certain period of development, does that make it something that you're seeking forever? And so like trying to do things to gain popularity or attention or affection from this group that he's trying to control. I don't know. I feel like there's so many different things that are all that all could be sort of playing together. I think money is a huge piece of it. But I do feel like for him specifically, there's this bizarre need for approval and attention even when he's got boatloads of it from a lot of different places. Like there's no level of deprivation there. I mean, there's no level of satiation there, you know?
Yeah. I think I do. I want to speak to your point, especially about affection. There, we do in my training, we've done a lot of work to look at observing responses and
Mhm.
conditioned reinforcement for a variety of things, including praise.
Mhm.
And praise doesn't always function as a reinforcer, and
Right.
oftentimes we have to condition it.
Yep.
So I is it a primary reinforcer? I don't know. I feel like if it has to be conditioned, probably not. But what I will say is that I would bet money that he experienced affection from some people,
Mhm.
but not from, but it may have been withheld or even intermittently reinforced from the people that mattered the most.
Right.
Uh, where, and so I think that even validates your point, all of your points even further about the drive for it, and then having this instructional history where I will do these things to get to hear these words, oh you're great, and you see it in the post, like oh I'm not, and it sounds like sometimes it sounds like a a teenager, a spoiled teenager. Other times it sounds like a third grader. I'm not inviting this teen to my new ballroom, because they are horrible. Obviously he wants them to want to go to his ballroom, and
Right.
he
Right.
probably would invite them if they said like, "Oh, please let us come."
Right.
And so
Right.
that
Yeah.
attention,
Yeah.
uh, that I think. So who's really, and then when you think about it, who's really in control?
I mean, it always goes back to the environment, right?
Yeah, the
Like
social, like
the social environment and his learning history. But then that makes you like, I mean, I guess with everything in behavior analysis, it totally takes the blame off of him as an individual, and
yeah.
I don't think I'm prepared to do that yet.
Yes, but also it takes the blame off of him as an individual, but it places the blame on the system that created him,
Yeah,
and uses him as a figurehead. So
yeah,
yes, made personal as a person, an individual person who engages in very horrible behavior. Um I guess we can't totally fault him, but what he is a symbol of and who he who he surrounds it, the
Yeah.
system, I
The
guess,
other
that has
group.
propped him
Yeah,
up.
that's
The
right.
group definitely has the blame, and he is definitely part of that group too. So
That's right.
he's not absolved. Not placing blame on him or refusing to place blame on him does not absolve him of the response or the consequences of his actions either.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So Skinner describes feedback loops where group behavior spirals out of control, like whispering in a silence please room, turning into a loud conversation, or teasing escalating to aggression. What
Mhm.
are some examples of these feedback loops that you've seen? And what parallels can we see in online discourse, political polarization, or classroom dynamics?
Okay, so the like in order for something like silence please as our example to exert control over the behavior of whispering, okay? There has to be some level of reinforcement there for keeping the behavior at that level and or punishment or extinction for when the behavior changes. And I feel like when we see these feedback loops, it's because the contingencies are evolving as the behavior of the group is evolving. And so if you think about like online behavior specifically, I have always said that I felt like online bullying and the rhetoric that you see in online spaces is so very different than what you would see if you were face to face with a human being having that conversation, because the contingencies of punishment and seeing somebody's facial reaction to saying some awful things would modify what we're saying. Like we wouldn't continue to escalate because there would be some consequence there that like stops us from advancing. And I think that in the online space, you don't have that. I mean, in fact, you not only don't have the negative consequences, but you also probably have, you're being like fueled on by other people who are commenting and
Mm-hmm.
saying, like, oh, yeah, we hate them, or, it's all like, and I think the more you see things as they advance, it sort of desensitizes you to the saliency of that, right? So, like, you go from somebody who's maybe making some mild accusations about somebody of a certain race, and then you have some like neo-Nazi that chimes in, and now all of a sudden we've like moved the bar on what's acceptable because there just aren't enough punishers being distributed in real time, and social consequences are completely gone, missing all of the facial expressions, the body language, the subtle social consequences that shape and change our behavior and all of our interactions, is completely missing from the online space.
Interesting. And as you were talking, I was thinking about my own behavior. On my, I am more likely to say something that is out of bounds
Mm.
in person rather than
Oh,
online.
really?
Whereas, yes,
Wow.
and because I tend to be very measured online, first, I think because of the permanence
Yeah.
and knowing that it can be brought up at any point, and that kind of discourse. Whereas in person, I'm much more likely to, if I'm going to say something nasty, it's going to be in the moment and it almost like an impulse. Whereas and maybe the response effort is greater to go and post something ugly. Like I have to actually think through and like write it out, and
Wow.
obviously I'm going to make sure it's correct, grammatically correct. And so then there's time for maybe some self control to kick
Thought.
in.
Yeah.
But that's really interesting because when like bringing that context back into the frame of the a racial comment, people are leaving and then coming back to it. And
Yeah.
so oftentimes you'll see comments over days, even where
Yeah.
they're going live their life. They might be stewing about it, they might not. And
Yeah.
obviously trolls are getting mixed in there too to feed the flames. And so people are making choices to come back to these types of to this type of discourse
Yeah.
and living their life in between, which is really insane. And so then I wonder about the contingencies there, especially because you're getting reinforcement from complete strangers. It's
Well,
not.
here's what I'll say is being somebody who has been like somebody producing stuff online for a while now, people have said stuff to me in comments that I've never had anybody say to me in person. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I've never ever been treated in person as poorly as I have been treated in the comment sections of some of the videos that I post. And so it just speaks to the feedback loop of how much more willing people are to say things or do things in an online space that they would never do in real life. Because I'm sure that I've been engaged with people that may be thinking some pretty not nasty things, but it's never been said out loud. And so there's something about the anonymity of the online sphere of not being face to face with a person and then having a group of people who are cheering you on and reinforcing you for saying bad shit.
Well,
Like,
and you're also able to fill in the gaps when a person's in front of you
yes,
and they're talking, you can hear their voice, the tone of their voice, the
yes,
way
yes,
the speed at which they're speaking. All of those things really also shape our responses. Whereas online, you can make
yes,
it the nastiest tone, the ugliest, the highest volume, you know.
yeah,
And so that I think that that audience control and that condition seeing functioning in that way probably plays a huge part in it too.
big
So
time.
interesting.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the perfect ending to our podcast on social behavior to bring it
Yep.
back to social media and how that sort of plays out with the same contingencies that Skinner was talking about before social media was even a thing.
Yeah, it's a crazy demon out there.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for watching Behavioral Gab. We look forward to seeing you soon.
Bye.
It's the